Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
And that's that. We can stand up and fight and ride all day through the night. We can make this change right and see our hopes and our dreams come to fruition. It's time to unite as one, calling out to our founding fathers. This is our mission to make you proud.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanity Awaken Radio. Tonight we have a special guest. We have Michael Murphy, and we're really excited to have him on the show. And for people who don't know, Michael J. Murphy is a multi-award-winning director, producer, political activist, and president of the Coalition Against Geo-Engineering. As an independent reporter and community organizer, his work includes directing and co-producing the groundbreaking documentaries which have awakened millions to the environmental threats of geoengineering programs. Why in the world are they spraying? And what in the world are they spraying? And several other short films that address chemtrail geoengineering programs. He is also working on his third film to address geoengineering titled Unconventional Gray. And the website to it is www.unconventionalgray.com. His work has enlightened millions around the world to take action in protecting our fragile environment. Michael also has a strong history of community service, which has led him to become a founder in the building of 2 inner-city community food banks, various community empowerment initiatives, and taking on the leadership roles in several other empowering communities. Michael has spoken about these issues in various places around the world, which include Washington, D.C., and the European Union. Michael is also working with political leaders around the world to develop political initiatives that will limit and or ban geoengineering practices. He has also appeared on hundreds of radio and television shows around the world. Many of his interviews and videos can be seen on his websites. One is whyintheworldartheyspraying.com, geoengineeringactionnetwork.org, and as I mentioned earlier, unconventionalgray.com. And for those who don't know, geoengineering is also known in the truth or conspiracy community as chemtrails. You know, those little lines in the sky that we see every single day, I know, here in LA. And a lot of people think that these are just contrails, and they are most definitely not.
Yeah, this is a big deal for me because I'm really looking forward to this interview. I have a lot of questions about this, and I know that the audience does too. And this has been going on for a very long time, but it's recently become more mainstream news and being taken out of the conspiracy realm. And people are starting to really talk about this, and this is a prime time to have Michael on, so I'm really excited to have him here. So without further ado,
everyone, here's Michael Murphy. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, and really a critical time in the work that we do.
Absolutely. I know every single day I walk out the door, and it seems like the entire sky is covered now with these chemtrails. And, I've been doing some research on these for the past couple of years with the heavy metals involved in them. And for those of our audience who don't really know what chemtrails are in geoengineering, could you give a brief example of what are in these aerosols and what's really going on behind all this?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Well, geoengineering is defined as the artificial modification of the Earth's climate. So there are a number of scientists, corporations, and politicians that are talking about dispersing chemicals into our sky. And after attending numerous geoengineering symposiums and conferences, it became very clear to us that there was something more in our sky. So the idea of stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, also called solar radiation management, and a number of other names, is the idea of, by airplanes and other methods, putting particulates such as aluminum, strontium, barium into our sky. And the stated goal of this is to reflect sunlight back into space. So when you look at aluminum, it's lightweight and it's highly reflective. So that being dispersed into our sky would reflect sunlight back into space. Again, they say it's to cool the planet. However, in an unconventional gray magnetic film, we really question the validity to even get an accurate temperature reading while these programs are ongoing. But what we have and what we found, and what in the world are they spraying? We found rain tests from around the world, and they match exactly what geoengineers deny they're putting into our sky, but state that they urgently want to, and that's putting aluminum and other particulates into our sky. So what we see in the sky in terms of these trails that do not dissipate, they spread out, it matches what geoengineers say they want to do, but deny they're doing, and it matches about 96 patents that are devices that have been designed to spray these materials into our sky. So we brought together in both what and why in the world are they spraying, the scientists talking about these programs, but also scientists out of the programs who've been testing our rain. And again, the rain matches the footprint of geoengineering programs exactly. The debate that's really going on now is why are these programs moving forward? They've been ongoing for about 50 years, probably full-scale deployment since the late 90s. And because they do reflect sunlight back into space, a number of people believe they're put into our atmosphere to cool the planet. And you'll notice on a nice warm day, if you're outside in the sun and then the trails, planes start coming back and forth, the temperature in that local region will drop because the sunlight's not hitting that part of the planet. However, at night, aerosols act as a blanket and they trap heat. So it's really debatable in terms of what they're doing. What we covered in why in the world are they spraying was the weather control, the weather manipulation that these programs can have. And if you look back, aluminum, again, it's highly reflective, lightweight. Geoengineers say this is a suitable toxin or metal to put into our sky because it will stay up longer, but it's also very conductive. So conductors are very important in terms of helping various other technologies such as the HARP system, which is an ionospheric heater. It can create vacuums in certain parts of the sky. It can actually create bubbles, diverting jet streams. So there are a number of applications associated with these programs. We feel that weather control is probably the most used in terms of putting these aerosols into our sky. I hope that made sense.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much for that, Michael. I definitely wanted to ask you, for some of our audience who might be listening to this and say, okay, wow, that sounds like a serious issue. But, it's up in the sky, it's in the ionosphere, or, it doesn't really affect us. But these aerosol particulates fall to the ground, and, we're seeing some serious health risks involved in this. And, I know that some people have done some research where, because of the, I believe it's from the aluminum, it's creating so that our bones can't properly take in the vitamin C or like the calcium to strengthen bones. And as a result, we're seeing a lot more injuries. We're seeing the heart palpitations. Could you go a little bit more into that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what goes up must come down, right? So what we've been finding in rain tests around the world, in some tests, as high as a 60,000% increase in aluminum in our rain tests. So it's in rain all around the world. People from every continent, again, after we released the films, it started testing rain. Very, very toxic, but it's this footprint of aluminum, barium, and strontium. people now have started getting blood tests. Those who have started getting blood tests have found aluminum, other geoengineering metals off the charts. I mean, just extremely high. Aluminum is very toxic. If you notice, people quit using aluminum cookware because of its toxicity. But anyways, it's very difficult to remove from the system. You can do it, but it's very difficult. As a result, we've been seeing Alzheimer's and other aluminum-related illnesses going through the roof. Respiratory mortality went from 8 down to number 3 in just a couple-year period. And again, other aluminum-related illnesses. You did mention heart palpitations. Barium. Barium increases our blood pressure and thus creates an increase in heart attacks. What people have noticed on heavy spray days, and I've spoken to a couple of emergency room physicians, and they that are aware of the geoengineering program, they've stated that their emergency rooms are just packed on heavy spray days. People complaining of irritability, chest pain, even an increase in heart attacks, dry mouth, all of these things that seem to be related to geoengineering programs. So not only is it very destructive to our soils, to our ecosystem, we now have tree decline in all areas of the planet, whether it's in areas of a drought like Los Angeles or an abundance of rain in Illinois. Once that rain gets into the root systems usually will shut down. And that creates a very slow, painful death for the tree or for the crop, whatever it might be. Aluminum also changes the pH of our soil. So in areas like Northern California, we've had 10 times the normal alkalinity in our soil, and that coincides with very high increases of aluminum. Now, what happens when the pH of the soil increases? A lot of plant life, such as in Northern California, rely on an acidic soil. When that soil changes, of course, it creates a lot of stress on the plant. So we're seeing entire tree decline in all parts of the U.S., even forest collapse. So it's very much of an ecological concern, but also a human health concern as well.
It's very convenient that Monsanto has created an aluminum-resistant, stress-resistant seed to combat this.
Well, it's not necessarily. They do have an aluminum-resistant seed. Whether that's involved with these programs, there's a little bit of science behind that. But what they have developed is an abiotic stress-resistant seed. What is abiotic stress? It's everything that will stress the soil, and geoengineering creates all of this. Too much moisture, drought conditions, heavy metal contamination, pH changes, and other things that will stress the soil. So what happens when we see our yields decrease in terms of our crop yields, which they are? I live on an organic farm in Maui. We've had about a 50% decline in our ability to grow natural organic foods. When the soils get stressed enough, what happens is Monsanto comes in with these new abiotic stress-resistant seeds, which are called terminator seeds. They do not regenerate. So what it does, it forces the farmer to go into a new seed that will grow in this new soil, but then year after year after year, that farmer has to go back to Monsanto and purchase their seeds. It very much puts the farmer in an area in a position of enslavement, and it keeps them just poor enough to continue developing their seeds. So we have this huge shift of power from natural organic seeds now, which people are moving into, the market share that Monsanto has into the abiotic stress-resistant seeds. So a big concern for those of us who like natural organic foods. It seems like in a few years we're not going to be able to grow any of those.
That's a stunning revelation and really horrible. For me, it's one of the questions that I had was actually how do you think that this was affecting our food supply? But you actually answered that. And the other thing is, I know that in a lot of states you're not allowed to collect rainwater. Is that done as a precaution because they know that they're going to find that people are going to start to get sick as a result of drinking collected rainwater?
Well, I'm not sure if that's a stated goal. I think the goal is related to what's called Agenda 21. Agenda 21 has goals, and we actually covered it extensively in my next film, Unconventional Gray. The goals of Agenda 21 are to literally control every natural resource and every resource on the planet. So instead of us being able to collect rainwater, shower, do what we want with that water, if the state owns it, they can thus control it. Water is the next soil. And the only way that water can become the next oil is if certain corporations, through government laws, actually can control this. So we've seen water rates, especially here in California, literally go through the roof related to this drought, which was geoengineered in the first place. And what's interesting, we spoke about how aluminum relates to jet stream manipulations. What we've seen, the pattern offshore of California, are these huge campaigns. And while they laid down the aerosols, they utilized HARP and other technologies to create a bubble in the atmosphere. So we've seen this polar vortex, a very unusual pattern off of the coast of California. So the jet stream that should be coming right into California, bringing moisture, other forms of precipitation, when it hits that bubble, because again, they're using those aerosols, heating them up, creates a rise in the atmosphere. The jet stream then diverts up into the Arctic region, bringing all this warm air. That's why we have very high temperatures in the Arctic. But then the jet stream wants to divert it, wants to correct itself. So it's coming back down, bringing all of this moisture, warmer air into the Midwest, and then also, cold air into the Midwest and also the East Coast. So that's one way that they can create the drought and then bring corporations in through Agenda 21 objectives, absolutely happening right now. Farmers now are getting their water reallocated due to executive orders from Governor Brown, and big corporations are coming in, buying up that dried up farmland at pennies on the dollar. So there's a lot of individuals who are in corporations who are benefiting right now from the California drought, which based on our research has nothing to do with natural patterns. It has all to do with geoengineering. Plus it's warming up the Arctic. So a lot of this is also being blamed on CO2, which fits right in with the global warming agenda, which has no validity at all. And we hopefully will talk about how geoengineering relates to climate models being bunk and bogus, and what that means to the entire climate change industry.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty clear to me that, the whole, like, it's just ridiculous that, that they want to, tax us for our carbon emissions. It's just when we have people creating this entire facade and wanting people to buy into that. I have a question to throw out there for the skeptics. I know that there is some aluminum that's found naturally occurring in soil. What's the difference between the naturally occurring amount compared to the increase in aluminum, so we can get an idea of how much is really showing up?
Aluminum is one of the most abundant metals in the Earth's crust. However, it's not free-form aluminum, so it can't float around. I'm being very basic and very specific. So aluminum in its free form is extremely toxic because it's not bound to anything else. Free-form aluminum is what's being sold as the preferred metal to put into our sky, and it's absolutely what they're putting into our sky. And it's interesting because that issue came up, and we had the debunkers said, oh, you're just getting soil, you're just getting some of the aluminum from the soil. But then we started coming up with tests that had, high aluminum, no barium, and a little bit of strontium, or just aluminum, no barium, no strontium. Even some tests that had barium and strontium, but no aluminum. If you get soil samples, you would expect to see all aluminum, barium, and strontium in the test because of the pattern. Our soils contain all of these metals. So that shows us that what's being dispersed into our atmosphere is separate from, obviously, soil. There's no validity to that whatsoever, and especially the way that we conducted our tests, and many of the scientists conducted our tests, very much far away from any dust, any other types of sampling. So we have had our controls, and it's conclusive. This is free-form aluminum, which should not be in our environment, and that makes it very toxic because when we inhale that aluminum, it quickly wants to bind onto something, and that's what happens when it gets put in. When we inhale that, it binds onto the other elements in our system, and that's what makes it very difficult to remove. But very good question.
Wow, thank you for that answer. That's incredible. I had a question too. Do you think that they were ever planning to use this technology to seed deserts, or to give the people in the world who didn't have any water? Because you hear this as one of the arguments for this, and or was it just really done to implement the Agenda 21 and maybe create a weather war of some variety?
Weather warfare has been around for a very long time. We don't have to look back too far for Project Popeye. That was a program in Vietnam where I think they flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail with about 13 feet of rain just by regular cloud seeding a number of years ago. Do I think that people are utilizing this technology for the good? Well, if they were, we wouldn't have severe droughts in Africa. And then Monsanto coming in with a drought-resistant seed, we wouldn't have droughts in our California area if they could create that balance. They're absolutely using it to consolidate monetary and political power into the hands of a few at the expense of all life on Earth. The system that we have does not benefit on helping other people. If it did, we would have a beautiful planet. It benefits by stripping away resources. The system benefits by utilizing warfare techniques towards whether it's a certain country or a certain region. This is about consolidating monetary and political power. And now we have this climate change agenda, which we cover extensively in Unconventional Gray. And we look at the climate change agenda, which is a multi-trillion-dollar agenda, all based on climate models that show CO2 as the reason for the changes in our climate. These climate models do not show the largest factor in the changing climate, and that's geoengineering programs. As a result, it's completely bogus, it's completely fraudulent, and you can't move forward. So now we have the system that's creating world government. And actually in Paris, France, 193 countries, nations, signed on to the climate change agreement. What that did, it formed a brand new world government. It's an unelected body, the IPCC, with the United Nations, that do have the power and ability now to put mandates, taxes, and other forms of legislation on us. It's an unelected body. We didn't elect them, but they're moving forward with many mandates. As a matter of fact, in 2015, over 500 climate laws came into effect here in the United States. And again, it wasn't our elected officials who agreed on this. It was the United Nations. We're moving into a period of what many are calling a carbon dictatorship, which is a huge consolidation of power, world government that has dictatorial powers that will micromanage what we do in our homes, how much we drive, how far we drive, how many lights we use, what appliances we use in our home. This is a dream for corporate America. And the reason is this: we have these smart meters now that are on outside of most of our homes, and they monitor what we use, how much energy we use, what appliances we're using. And the goal of cap and trade, now cap, what is cap? Cap means we will all have to have our carbon usage capped. They might bring it down 40%, could be 50%, unless you have the ability to trade and purchase offsets of carbon credits. So if you don't have money, you are going to have to reduce your carbon footprint. And what's even more shocking, let's say if you use, the vacuum cleaner you bought last week in your home, and this new government says, we demand that everybody uses the General Electric vacuum cleaners because they're green, they're better for the economy. If you use that vacuum cleaner that you're using today and the smart meter picks it up, you could get a $100 fine in your home. It could even be a $200 fine and then be forced into buying another appliance. Let's say if you leave the home, you go to work and you leave the light on, smart meter picks that up, you could get fined and most likely will get fined. Could be a $100 fine, could be a $500 fine. These carbon reduction strategies are not based on people being voluntary with this. It's based on mandates, it's based on fines, it's based on penalties to force us into another form of behavior. And this is really bad. And as a matter of fact, we have in Oregon, they just started tracking mileage, the mileage that people drive in their automobiles. And while they're just going into this mileage tax, remember, you will have to reduce your carbon output. So let's say if you drive 20 miles a day to and from work, and you have to cap that 60% or 50%, you will get fined for every additional miles that you drive. And it could be a considerable fine. Could be $10, could be $20 each additional mile that you drive. This is a complete scientific dictatorship. It's coming in mandated not by United States. This is United Nations. And the Obama administration just announced that the UN police force would be coming here on American soil. The United Nations does not come to the U.S. to protect our constitutional rights. They're coming to enforce mandates. This is not good. Again, this is a multi-trillion-dollar transfer of wealth away from people into the hands of somebody else. There are receivers who are going to be receiving these trillions of dollars of money, and the climate change agenda is the perfect enemy that has allowed the United Nations and other interests to sell us, the world, giving up its sovereignty, giving up its freedom. And again, this is a corporate dream. Being able to mandate what people do in their home, you can't lose. So there are trillions and trillions of dollars worth of contracts. Now, our goals and our objectives are to completely block this, showing that climate change models or climate models are incorrect. So we have a very, very important strategy that we're moving forward with.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Michael.
Wow.
We're kind of getting towards the end of our conversation, and I wanted to gear our talk towards there seems to be some like partial disclosure going on right now, or even full disclosure of that geoengineering is real, it's happening, it's not a conspiracy theory. Just last month, I saw an article in KTLA saying cloud seeding is real, it's going on, it's not a conspiracy theory, they're trying to use it to fix the drought in California, and this is happening right now as we speak. Every single day, I mean, I feel like they're really trying to let us know they are spraying. Like, they're going over the top now, I've noticed in the last 6 months. The entire sky is a blanket. I've been seeing some other news reports saying that the government has come forward saying that geoengineering is real, or like NASA's doing it. Like, are any of these claims valid? You know, I know the KTLA one's legit, but like, what's your take on all this and what's it aiming towards?
They're valid, but there are many forms of geoengineering. So what we're talking about, the stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, the planes way high up in the sky, which are dispersing these big trails, those programs are illegal right now. But through the climate change agenda, they are creating the framework to legalize geoengineering without our input and without the input of our legislators. So that means we have the ability today to move forward with legal and legislative steps. However, once this climate change agenda matures, and it does have goals to legalize geoengineering, they will remove our ability to take both legal and legislative action. There's no question about it. So it's very concerning. But again, geoengineering has many levels, whether it's ionospheric heating or even cloud seeding with silver iodide, something that has been legal and open for a number of years. But the stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, the full-scale deployment of these programs, today they're illegal. If we don't stop them from their legislation, tomorrow we won't have the ability to take any action.
Gotcha. That's very eye-opening.
I got to tell you, I watched both of the movies that you did, and at the end of them, I was in tears. And because I knew that some of this stuff I knew about geoengineering, and I had a peripheral idea of what it was. But when I saw the movies, it literally just set me. I was sitting on my bed watching this, just sobbing like a child. I'm like, what? Every time I look at a piece of food now, every time I look at an animal, every time I look at all of the, I walk around, doing my job or walking around, anywhere in town, and I think about everybody. I said, everybody, this stuff is falling on all of us, and this stuff is, and it's creating, autism and Alzheimer's and ADD and ADHD. Because I've seen the rise in this in my life. I'm 50 years old, and I've seen where people were getting, you never heard about anybody having ADHD before, and now suddenly everybody has it. And everybody's getting Alzheimer's, and cancer's coming out. Everybody's getting cancer.
Reports of people at 40 getting Alzheimer's now.
Yeah, and so it's just, when I gotta commend you a lot on making these films, because
absolutely,
this absolutely changed my opinion of it, because I was a big climate change guy, and I thought, well, seeing whales and polar bears floating on a piece of ice and all that stuff that you see in the news makes it look like at any minute that, it's going to be Armageddon. And this has been a really eye-opening conversation for me, and also watching your films has just completely shifted how I see this now. And I just wanted to just personally say thank you, and it's really great the work that you're doing, and it's really great that this is starting to become mainstream, so that people are starting to talk about it more openly, because we really need to get this under control.
Absolutely. I personally feel that this is the biggest threat to humanity as we know it, and we have a responsibility to let our government know as much as we can that we're not okay with this, and they shouldn't be either.
I agree. So, again, you can go to whyintheworldavespraying.com. We encourage everybody who orders a DVD to make copies and hand out for free. We also need support in the final film, so you can have the opportunity to pre-order and go to Unconventional Grey. That's Grey, spelled Grey, spelled Grey.com, and please pre-order or become an angel. We are in the final stages, expecting to release June 5th. So very important new information in this film, and I'm sure it will be a blockbuster.
I know, we're really excited to see that. Hey, Michael, I have one really quick last question before I let you go that I have to ask you. One of my buddies is a plane pilot, and he'll see the aerosols in the sky, and he'll just say they're contrails. For people who always say that in that argument, the ice nucleation that occurs at a certain altitude in the sky, correct? Compared to geoengineering, what's the difference between those?
Absolutely. Well, geoengineering is deliberate spraying of aerosols in our sky, but what a contrail or condensation trail is at a certain elevation where it's very cold and conditions are right, there will be condensation on that warm air that goes through the engine. Usually, contrails last only 4 to 5 seconds. They dissipate very quickly. And it would be great if everything that we're seeing is condensation trails. However, we have rain tests from the fallout. They match geoengineering models exactly. What we see in the sky matches geoengineering plans exactly. And I have found no evidence to indicate that what we're seeing in terms of the long trails are natural and are only condensation trails. So if he's a pilot, tell him to take me up. We'll go up and we'll do some tests, and we'll find out which ones are condensation trails, which ones aren't. The aluminum contamination, the barium contamination, that's coming from somewhere. There is a correlation between the levels that we see when the skies are laden with it. So yeah, without question, geoengineering programs are normal and real. And a lot of pilots, I think, feel that because they have the ability to fly a plane, that they're experts in emissions and plane exhaust. You know what? I drive an automobile. I cannot tell you what comes out of the tailpipe of my car. Even though I'm a driver, I can't, really, I don't have that knowledge. And I think it's kind of foolish and imprudent for pilots to come forth and claim that they're experts in atmospheric science and all of these other claims. Time to start getting real, guys. Time to start opening up your eyes. Time to start looking at the evidence and getting out of your denial. We all live in this planet, and I would just ask him, if he doesn't believe it's happening now, would he be supportive of geoengineers putting these metals into our sky? Chances are he's probably a decent guy, and he would say no. Well, let me tell you, they're very close to making these programs legal, so we need him in the battle as well. So I guess my advice would be to pray for him. Show him our films. About 98% of the people that see our films, especially pilots, come to realize that geoengineering programs are real, ongoing, and a threat to all life on the planet. So if he or she has children, whoever this pilot is, I would encourage them to get educated and perhaps stand with us in our battle to stop the legalization of these programs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Well said, sir. All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Everyone, check out his films. And Unconventional Grey will be out soon. And yeah, man, we're going to have you back on soon. I mean, just after this interview, I know I have so many more questions, but I know you got to get going.
And we'll make sure that everything's up on our Facebook page too, so they can have a link to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds great, guys. Thank you so much for covering this. And hopefully we'll see you guys out again. We'll do some connecting and talk about some things on other levels. I really enjoyed meeting you guys the other night, and keep up the great work. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. You too. We'll see you later.